2025 was arguably the best year for the Pokemon ROM hacking scene, with not only over a dozen new high-quality projects, but a plethora of technical advancements that leaves me with so much excitement for the future. So with 2025 coming to a close, I'll be talking about what I believe to be the top 10 most anticipated Pokemon ROM hacks set to arrive in 2026 and beyond, discussing both their planned features and content, as well as their development status. To be notified exactly when these games come out though, you're definitely going to want to subscribe, as I post weekly videos covering nearly every Pokemon fan game and ROM hack that releases. But without further ado, my name is Ari, and let's get started. Let's begin with a ROM hack that's demo was released earlier this year, and that's Pokemon Spades and Clubs. This hack takes place in the brand new region of Senta, where you'll play as a Pokemon trainer on a journey to collect 8 gym badges, complete the Pokedex, and become the very best. Right off the bat, I want to say that this hack uses the 3rd generation art style to its fullest potential. The routes and towns are absolutely beautiful, while still retaining that simple and comfortable design the older Pokemon games are known for. But this project's primary gimmick isn't a pretty region, rather a sizable roster of new Pokemon. I know the general opinion of Fakeamon is pretty mixed, but I personally found the ones in this hack to be very charming and really well sprited. The only complaint I could voice about the new Pokemon is how a lot of them seem to lack some useful moves at earlier levels, and the current content being balanced way too in favor of the Fire Starter. But with how understanding the developers have seemed to be about constructive criticism, I have a lot of faith that these issues will be resolved in future releases. Although this game has been in development for at least 2 years, and that's a fact that has left many people disappointed or hopeless for a completed release in the near future. But I do want to remind anyone with that sentiment that in order to deliver the best game possible, the creators have to make all of the Fakeamon sprites, overworld maps, tiles for those maps, custom UIs, and so much more, all while balancing their real-life responsibilities. Either way, if you want to keep up with the development of the hack, then I highly suggest following the creator's Twitter account, as there currently is not an official Discord or Poke community thread. But up next is an absolutely gorgeous ROM hack called Giratina's Legend. For those of you who don't know, this hack has been in development for quite a long time, but there are of course a lot of reasons for that. First off, this game is incredibly ambitious when it comes to both its narrative and graphical appeal. Filled with many cutscenes and character interactions, the hack seeks to tell a story about a group of scientists who failed to bridge a connection between the normal world and the distortion world. 5 years later, you yourself will play as a brand new Pokemon trainer on a journey with the original goal of collecting 8 gym badges, only to find yourself quickly wrapped up in a conflict that's heavily connected to the events that occurred half a decade ago. Now, for those of you paying attention to the dialogue on screen, I will say that what I'm playing is an unofficial translation of the game's more updated Italian demo, and should not affect the quality of the final product's English version. Outside of the story though, the hack is even more ambitious when it comes to the visuals. The overworld maps are incredibly well designed with a lot of attention to detail, and a ton of custom tiles to separate its world from almost any other ROM hack you might have played before. While I personally didn't find anything about the gameplay to be super unique or out of the ordinary, everything else the hack has shown to offer looks astonishingly good. But if you're wondering why its development is taking so long, well, I can really only give the same answer I did for the last project. And that's the fact that hacks of such quality can take many years to complete, especially while trying to balance its development with the real-life responsibilities the creator has. So while its progress has been slow over the years, it's still very much worth mentioning as one of the most anticipated Pokemon ROM hacks in the scene's entire history. Moving on is probably one of the most unique, but also technically advanced ROM hacks, and that's Pokemon Crown. This hack takes the turn-based combat we all know and love and completely scraps it for an auto chess one. If you don't know what auto chess is, well, to put it simply, you collect units, in this case your Pokemon, place them onto the field, and once the battle starts, they'll fight each other automatically. The strategy comes from what kind of units you bring, the items they're equipped with, and especially where you choose to place them on the field. But of course, this hack of Fire Red doesn't abandon everything about the Pokemon formula, as you'll still be on an adventure across a new region, catching new team members as they appear in the tall grass, and even taking on various gym leaders. Even if you aren't a fan of its combat system, which I can't say I am myself, you still have to admit that the project is incredibly impressive. Although with its first beta being released almost 3 years ago at this point, most players have lost hope or almost entirely given up on the project being updated. By taking a look at the Discord though, you'll find a plethora of recent development updates detailing new features that they've been working on, and even a full list of what's been done so far for the next version. But if you're still wondering why the update is taking so long, it likely has to do with the developers porting the entire hack over the decomps, allowing them to do a lot more with the game. So I think even with the massive gap in update releases, Pokemon Crown still has a bright future. And if you want to follow its progress, then definitely join their Discord in the pasted link below. 2025 saw the completed release of Pokemon Odyssey, a project that I believe to be the best Pokemon ROM hack ever made. However, just months later, the creator announced an entire sequel to have already started development. Now, this segment will be a bit short as there currently isn't any gameplay footage, but Heroes of Lemuria will take place in a brand new world with a Pokedex consisting of only regional variants. Instead of just picking one starter, you'll be able to choose from different classes that will give you 2 starters and affect your gameplay with special passives. All the new regional forms look amazing, and all of the new soundtracks revealed sound incredible. There currently isn't any news about when a demo or first release will arrive, but with the development team's track record of consistent update releases, I'm absolutely sure the project has a very bright future. At number 6 is a hack that's been on many people's minds for the past few years, and that's Pokemon Coral. I have to admit, I've never really been a fan of Generation 2 ROM hacks, even to the point where something like Pokemon Prism still didn't really interest me. But this one seriously blew me away with both its visual appeal and modern gameplay systems. The world is very colorful, built using a lot more detail and custom tiles than most second generation hacks, and offers a lot of extra areas to explore that aren't mandatory to complete the main story. While I think the project shines the brightest with its region and exploration, the quality of the gameplay doesn't fall very far behind. The project is built using the polished Crystal engine, allowing for 60 FPS, abilities, the physical special split, the fairy type, and even moves from newer generations. Alongside that though, also comes both rebalanced move pools and a slightly increased level of difficulty to provide you with a fun and engaging battle experience. Although it's been almost 3 years since the last demo, the developer still continues to share screenshots of new content on social media, meaning the game is still very much alive. So if you want to keep up with the hack's progress, then definitely check out the creator's Twitter page that can be found on screen or in the pastebin link below. But at number 5 is easily one of my favorite ROM hacks ever created, and that's Pokemon Darkfire. What makes this project so special is very obviously its world. The various routes and towns are incredibly detailed, built with a mix of custom and official tiles, animated objects, and a lot of other small things that are admittedly pretty easy to miss, but once you pay more attention to the world around you, they really start to make a difference. However, one of the biggest concerns I've witnessed about hacks that primarily focus on visuals is that they usually lack the same level of quality on the gameplay side. And while Darkfire doesn't introduce anything that spices up the Pokemon formula, it does make a lot of effort to keep it as fun as you'd expect it to be. The variety is extremely strong, allowing you to build a useful or exciting team pretty early, and while I wouldn't call Darkfire a difficult ROM hack, its boss fights were challenging enough to keep me engaged and encourage me to use a diverse party of Pokemon. Now, when I talked about this game in the past, I got a lot of comments from people feeling frustrated that the game had only progressed to the 3rd gym in around 5 years. Well, from the way I see it, I can only assume that the creators probably took a break from it, or just weren't working on it consistently during all that time, which becomes even more clear when you can see the almost daily GitHub updates in the Hacks Discord, and the next update being 70% 90% done after just 1 year. So although there was a long wait for the previous release, everything I've seen as of recent has led me to believe that Pokemon Darkfire has a very bright future. In 2016, a ROM hack known as Pokemon Vega would grace the Poke community forums as a completed project with over 100 new species to capture. However, this wasn't the first time the hack would see the light of day, as it was originally released in 2011 by a group of Japanese ROM hackers before being translated into English. This also wasn't the first time they had created a hack, being previously responsible for a more simple project called Altair Sirius, and it wouldn't be the last, moving forward with a new pair of games called Pokemon Rakoyon and Deneb. Despite lacking an English translation, these hacks would become incredibly popular in our community, due to what I can only assume to be a mix of good Fakemon designs, a charming visual appeal, and a difficulty level that forced the player to engage and interact with the new Pokemon, rather than just stomping through every battle with just a few that they had liked. But as some of you might know, the last update to this hack was released all the way back in 2018. This has led many players to believe that the game was abandoned, and while I don't agree with that sentiment, I'm also not going to blame anyone for thinking that way, nor am I going to tell you to just be patient like I have for every other segment. With how little recent information there is even when doing actual research, I don't think it's wrong for people to assume that development has stopped. There is strong evidence that the game isn't abandoned though, with one of the developers actively posting on Twitter, sharing new Pokemon they've created as recent as October this year. It should also be noted that even when the game is finally finished, it'll likely be a year or two before a proper translation is created, likely done by a third party. It's a really well-made ROM hack that, with the help of the English wiki, I've somehow managed to enjoy despite not understanding any Japanese myself. It's not a hack I think anyone waiting for should give up on, but it's not one you should stress over either. Keep it in the back of your mind and continue to enjoy the dozens of other ROM hacks released each year until more official news finally arrives. At number 3 is a hack that blew many people away with its last demo, and that's Pokemon Sovereign of the Skies. Like a few others on this list, this hack has a very big emphasis on storytelling and visual appeal, meshing both of them together to create a wonderful narrative filled with tons of high-quality cutscenes that is told inside of a world made up of many diverse locations. But it doesn't let go of its gameplay qualities either, with both 3 different difficulty modes to choose from and a really nice variety of Pokemon. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about what the game is, because being what I believe to be the 3rd most anticipated ROM hack ever, I'm sure most of you watching have at least heard of it before. What's more important to me is discussing its progress over the years and what the hack's future could look like. First of all, while the hack was originally released in 2011, I don't think it was consistently worked on during the entire decade between that and its most recent update. There's a very noticeable gap in the activity on the developer's Poke community page, and they even stated themselves that the most recent beta was a product of many attempts to recreate the original game they weren't happy with. Secondly, while recent dev updates have been pretty few and far between, there's still a lot of evidence that the hack is still being worked on. So while I can't really predict when a new update will actually arrive, I do think that the hack is very far from abandoned, and is just taking a while due to the creator having to balance it between all their real-life responsibilities. Multiple regions have always been a quite ambitious but very beloved concept in Pokemon ROM hacks, and a project that seeks to accomplish that idea is Pokemon Legacy Edition, a hack of Heart Gold that plans to have the Kanto, Johto, Sevi Islands, and even Hoenn region in one game. With the first 2 also receiving updated maps and graphics, this looked like it was going to be the biggest and most ambitious Pokemon ROM hack ever created. But of course, with ambition and scope also comes time required to develop the project. To my surprise though, this wasn't another hack that's been in development for nearly a decade, with little to no recent development updates. Even though their Twitter page has been pretty dead, by taking a look at the Discord right in the account's bio, you'll find a plethora of recent development updates, as recent as this July, and going only as far back as 2021. But just like the 7th hack on this list, it lacks a significant playable version version, leaving me without much to talk about that won't waste your time as a viewer. So I'll simply leave you with the fact that the project is still very much in development, despite the lack of updates outside of their own Discord. On the topic of NDS hacks though, I did also want to throw in a hack called Pokemon Iridium. Despite the Gen 5 look, this is a hack of Heart Gold that plans to have 2 completely custom regions, and a lot of balance changes to spice up the gameplay experience. While that first point might sound incredibly unrealistic and ambitious for an NDS hack, it should be known that the creator has already released a demo this year, has finished multiple other projects, and is very frequent with their development updates. The Pokemon ROM hack that I believe to be the most anticipated of all time is a remake of a hack that many of us in the community grew up playing, known as none other than Pokemon Light Platinum DS. The original version on the GBA was always well known for being extremely ahead of its time back in the day, and the remake was no different. Even playing it for the first time in 2025, I was pretty impressed, even compared to all the advancements that have been made today. However, it's no secret that this game has been in development for a very long time. As a matter of fact, its most recent public demo is set to turn 10 years old just 2 weeks after the release of this video. So what happened and why is it taking so long? Well, the first guess I can make is that back then the NDS scene was way less developed than it is now, likely leaving the creator with way less tools than even the original hack had all the way in 2012, which can be seen pretty easily in the demo, as it does lack some early events that Light Platinum was known for, and includes some bugs with the Generation 5 Pokemon. The second guess is that the project is incredibly ambitious, and not something that's easy to balance the development of as an adult with real-life responsibilities. But with the updates the developer has shared on their Twitter account over the last few years, I'm going to be optimistic and say that there's still hope for the project. And I'm especially excited that the next release will supposedly deliver improvements to the original story, and even Pokemon up to the 7th generation. So the least you could do to support it is just send some positivity their way whenever more development or even gameplay updates are released. Well, to my surprise, right while I was wrapping up this video, the creator released a full trailer for the next demo, showing off the updated maps and even newer generation Pokemon with much more polished sprites and move animations. So yes, despite the long development cycle, the game is very far from dead. And I really can't believe I'm saying this, but be on the lookout for the update to Pokemon Light Platinum DS, set to arrive in the near future. But that's just about going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe to know exactly when all these ROM hacks are released or updated. Thank you to my channel members for their continued support, and have a nice rest of your day.